All right, everybody, we are doing properties of exponents as our first redemption day video. So we have 5 properties: the product rule, power rule, quotient rule, negative exponents, and zero exponents. So the most important thing to remember is that when you have like a variable, say x, and it's to the power of 3, we need to know what we're talking about to start. So the first thing I want you to remember is the x. That's what we call the base. And the 3, that's what we call our exponent. So let's keep that in mind as we do these problems. So exponent. So with the product rule, notice that we are first off multiplying, right? We have x to the 4th times x to the 5th. And notice the other thing is that our bases are the same. So when you're multiplying and your bases are the same, you can add the exponents. So we have x to the 4 plus 5, and we all know what 4 plus 5 is, that's 9. So that's the product rule. The power rule is when you have some kind of expression. So here we have b to the power of 3, and notice that we have parentheses surrounding that b to the power of 3, and it's all raised to the power of 6. When that happens, you can actually distribute this power of 6 to the power of 3 to get b to the 18. You could also do that if it was dividing inside or multiplying inside. So like if I had b squared times b to the 3rd to the 7th power, you could distribute like that. Or if you had that b squared divided by b to the 3rd to the power of 7, you could distribute that 7 as well. The one thing you cannot do when you have the power rule is if you are adding things inside. So like x squared plus 1 to the power of 2, you cannot distribute that 2, because when you're adding or subtracting inside a parenthesis, the power rule does not apply. So never do that, okay? The next rule we have is the quotient rule. And I'm going to zoom in on this problem because it's a little hard to see. So the quotient rule. So notice here that we have a base of c, and our exponents are 13 and 5. And then the operation we're doing is division, because we have this fraction bar, and fraction bars mean division. So what the quotient rule says is that you can look at your exponents, and to simplify them, you can simply just take the top exponent and subtract from the bottom exponent. So if I do 13 minus 5, let's see, that is 8. And that's it, you're all done. And then if you were to write this as a fraction, it'd be c over 8 over 1. If the 13 was on the bottom and the 5 was on the top, then you would just put the answer on the bottom of the fraction. All right, the next thing is negative exponents. So negative exponents, the only thing that we do with them to start is move them around. So if I have a to the power of negative 2, let's turn this into a fraction. So we can turn any term into a fraction by just putting it over 1. So the only power this negative 2 has is it has the power to move that a around. So in general, we don't like negative exponents. So what we do is we're going to take that a, and because it has a negative exponent, we can move it on down to the denominator of this fraction. And so now it becomes a squared on the bottom. The minute you do that moving, the negative goes away. And then on the top, since that a to the negative 2 moved, it leaves a 1 behind. The other way you could see it is if it was already in fraction form. So let's do like b squared over, let's say, I don't know, like g to the negative 2 power. Then this g to the negative 2, again, the only power that negative 2 has is it can move. So we can move that up to the top, and we get b squared times g squared all over 1. The final thing we need to remember about our properties of exponents is when we have a 0 as an exponent. The most important thing to remember is anything to the 0 power is always 1. And that's it. That's a zero exponent. Good luck on your redemption day quiz. I'll see you in the next one.